Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting Tuesday night Eventide patrons only stream. I am your world designer, game designer, creator, Jason Bullman. You haven't been watching these for months and months at this point. Hey there everybody, welcome to today's stream. I'm excited to be chatting with all of you here today. Last week we did some work on part 2 of Wolfrun's Fate. That's still kind of ongoing. It's a little slow going because I'm kind of having to do some surgery on some pieces and move some things around. So instead of continuing that work this week, I figured instead I might start doing some planning on another piece that needs to come together. As we roll into the summer here, we're getting close to the summer, I want to start looking towards the fall, which, needs to have some releases in it, to keep things moving. And, as a result, I gotta plan out all the pieces. So one piece that I'm looking to pull together. So as the player's guide comes together, which is getting closer and closer every day, that thing is really starting to come together. It's getting to the point where I might need to start considering how I get it edited and how I get all the art laid into it. That's a big expense. I need to figure that out. I have, art from the adventures and stuff, some of which I can use for, background pieces in this, but there's only X number of pieces I have. I've got some funds saved up for extra art, but a lot of that gets eaten up real quick. Art is very pricey. So, we're going to see how it goes. But it is coming together nicely here, at a pretty good clip. But as a companion to that, one thing that I want to make sure exists, because I think it's critical to, we are getting close to art. Yeah, I have art for part 2 of Wolfrun's Fate. I have the sketch outline for the art order for part 3, but I don't want to pull the trigger on that until part 2 is kind of in edit. And then, obviously there'll still be part 4, and then I've got both an Eventide player's guide and a GM's guide that I need to get art for. I have a cover for the player's guide. Possibly I think I have a cover for the player's guide. And there's some maps and stuff in there that I'm still working on, if you remember those. Those are still in process. Although, to be honest, since I've moved, I have not unpacked my drawing tablet. It is right over there. But I haven't unpacked it or set it up yet. So I need to get back to that. That's kind of high on my list of things to do. And maybe I'll do some mapping streams here coming up. Those are nice and fun and chill. And again, just a good way to get me back invested into some of these pieces. So, no, what I want to talk about here today, what I want to kind of go through here today is what a quick start guide for Eventide might look like, what it might contain, chat about what works in a player's guide. Or sorry, not a player's guide. This is a quick start. So the thought behind a quick start is a way to give everyone a very short sample to let them get an idea of what the world is about. Many times it's for games, what the game is about, but in this case it's kind of what the world is about, to help them make the decision of if it's something that's right for them. Right? It's generally free or very, very inexpensive. It might be the sort of thing that you include with the player's guide as a freebie, just so that the GM who has it can give the kind of quick start to the players, and give them a sense of what the world is all about without them having to read the whole thing or absorb the whole thing. So the goal of it is to be relatively short. Now, our player's guide is coming in at around 64 pages right now. That's my current guess. That's a meaty book for a solo publisher like me. And outside of that, right, I've got a GM's guide that's probably going to be maybe not quite as big, but will still be kind of beefy. And then I've got all these adventures. So this quick start doesn't need to be huge. 4 pages would probably be the minimum size, but I wouldn't want it to be bigger than, say, 8. 6 might be the sweet spot. I don't know. Well, but it depends on content, right? And what all we want to go in it. It'll reuse assets from everything else. It's not designed to be something that is an extra cost sink. Just a taster. A way to give everyone a sense of what the world is about. So yeah, Alara, you're getting right to the heart of it here. So I'm gonna start. I've got my notepad open here. I'm just gonna chat with all of you as I type. Um, I think the first thing it needs to have is kind of a world. Let's spell primer. And this needs to be a relatively concise. Nice look at the world of Eventide with a focus on, not a focus, a snapshot of history, and a brief rundown of how those events have shaped the modern day. And the death of magic. So I think that's the key. The hook there is to get folks excited about kind of what's going on with the setting. So that's the world primer. But I don't think that's all that we do that's just kind of lore related, because then I think we do also then kind of give a first... So the world primer really will just kind of set about the history of the world, right? Broad strokes, couple paragraphs. It's probably something that, is, a quarter to half a page of time. That's, any more than that feels like too much. Then we get to a, boy, let me pull up one of my documents here. I have some thoughts. No, not you. Yeah, I mean, calling it the TLDR version of the world history is kind of right on the nose. Okay. So then it probably needs to do a a look at Alnir. When I was looking at that, I don't think I fully realized that all of you could see it. That's interesting. Did that really pop up for all of you? Is that automatic? Let's see. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, look at that. Huh. Good to know. So I'll look at Alnir. Going over the major players. Like Zankar, Halfling Freehold, Arnathis, Southern Kingdoms, Crownbog, and the Goblins. And then the free... the northern... Okay. So, we should then do a look at Alnir, kind of again, just giving a sense of kind of what's going on in the continent. And then zooming into the Ice Scar Valley. This is really just kind of a look at the primary area of the setting. Launch. With a big focus on Wormbone. But also mentioning the other larger settlements and a bit on the region's history. So, okay. I think, ideally, the world primer, the look at Allnear, the Ice-Scar Valley, this probably needs the map of Allnear. And the map of the Ice-Scar Valley. Now, I might be able to go light detail on the Allnear map and present that as a bit smaller. But those two maps alone are going to take up a pretty large amount of space. So I think this whole history and primer thing, the world primer, the look at Allnear, the Ice-Scar Valley thing, is probably 2 pages in total, right? So I'm just going to call this the setting. And we'll call it 2 pages. Because I think that's what it's going to be. Could be 3. I think 2 is the minimum. Especially if it's going to include the maps. There's no way it's going to be smaller than that. Is there anything I'm missing? I don't think so. Like, there's a bunch of topics and things that I don't think are appropriate for a quick start. Doing a look at how the cosmology works. Too much of a deep dive. Investigating kind of some of the individual cultural histories, like talking about the different continents on the planet. You know, there might be brief mentions of some other places, like, you know, how the halflings actually come from across the sea from an island called Helenanthus, but I don't need to go and talk about Helenanthus. You know, that humans first came to this region from across a land bridge from the north, and came from Balsampra, right? I don't need to really kind of go into that level of detail. And a lot of those other parts of the world are still pretty scarce in overall detail as well. I have notes and stuff for them, but, you know, I don't have maps with cities and stuff. That's a bit far beyond my where I'm at in the creation process for some of that stuff, because I'm not setting adventures there, right? I guess there are some major cities and stuff. A lot of them are inside Zankar. You know, mentioning Skyhammer and a couple of the other places. Yeah, there is kind of an interesting thing. I'm trying to decide whether or not I need to change the name of a couple of the old cities. Well, a slight tangent. With the setting and the game moving away from the OGL, there are certain names that I was using as proper names to say that, you know, these cities were founded based on their tie to a legendary weapon. That when a city became a good enough size, the master smith of the town created a weapon, and that weapon would become the town's name, kind of like its namesake. Now, by and large, you know, Skyhammer is a Pathfinder thing, so that's fine. Silver Spear is fine. That's something I made up. Frost Shield is, again, something I made up. But, you know, there's, you know, Flame Tongue is a city, and Frostbrand is a city, and those are OGL terms. So, yeah, I might have to change them. It's not the end of the world. You know, having a burning sword and a cold sword, or cold, you know, weapon. But it's not like I can't come up with something else, right? There's plenty of directions I could take it, right? You know, yeah, glacial hammer, right? I don't know, whatever. I have to see where they fall in some of the definitions. It's possible they've been released into the Creative Commons, but I don't know that I want to co-license this with Creative Commons just to get at those words. So I don't know. Don't know right now. It's not really relevant to what we're doing here today. So, anyway, I need to do some research. You know, one of the things that they never tell you about when you're doing game design is just how much time you will spend doing research. And, you know, sometimes it's because you're trying to write an adventure about, you know, uh, various stars and stuff, or you're trying to create a puzzle that involves, you know, ancient poisons. And you can spend a lot of hours going down Wikipedia and other rabbit holes, just trying to track down the information you need that then might lead to a book that you need to get. And, you know, you can just make it up, right? And that's why oftentimes in some adventures you'll just see things that are just totally made up off. So, in fact, in part 1 of Wolfram's Fate, there's that entire alchemical recipe you need to come up with. Yeah, everything in that is just made up. Why? Because first of all, alchemy isn't real. And second, you know, even if I did want to base it off chemical reactions, I didn't want to do the homework on it. It's just like, you know what, if I make stuff up, it doesn't matter. But the moment I start saying, yeah, titrate a solution of, you know, this with that, and, you know, somebody's going to do the math on me, it'll... So, don't do that. Don't do that. So same thing goes with this sort of stuff, is that when you use names, you gotta do due diligence on names. Even when you invent names, it's always good to throw it in some search engines and just see whether or not it's a word in a different language that means something you maybe don't want it to mean, or that it's a really common name in a different language. You know, you don't want to be like, yes, look at my NPC with its incredibly strange and exotic name, and it just is, you know, John in a different language. It's their equivalent, John. Super common. That's happened before, right? So, anyway, I always kind of run, especially your major names. I think it you can get down to the line where it's like, it doesn't matter. This NPC's on screen for 4 minutes. They don't matter. But I guarantee you, you know, the names of like major nations and stuff. Yeah, I run all of those things through screens and filters to try and make sure that I'm not infringing on somebody else's copyright, or, you know, saying a word that is a slur in a different language or something, right? You definitely don't want. So, anyway, that's our setting for the quick start. Now, generally speaking, quick starts also kind of start talking about how to make a character in that setting. So I think this should as well. So that's the base setting quick start. And then the next part of the quick start should be characters. And this is basically a rundown of basic character options for PCs in the world of Eventide. So, there's a bunch of things we're going to have to cover, and I think the easiest way for us to categorize these things is to do so in terms of how character creation works. So, ancestry has to be step 1. I'll definitely get to the magic stuff. And basically that means, you know, I'm going to put this in general notes. Specific callouts for what is in and what is out. So in Ancestry, it's, you know, no gnomes, fleshy, fae, but add in gloamlings. And I do think this should give gloamling basics for level 1. Not all the level 1 options. You're not going to get all the feats. You're not going to get all the heritages. But give the basic rundown with like 1 or 2 heritages and a couple feats. And then talk about all the ones that exist in the player's guide. So, a chunk. The gloamling chunk would be kind of large. But that's about it. 2, backgrounds. List a few. That's it. 3, classes. No druid. No primal casters. Talk about the penumbrous. Probably can't include the first level of the Penumbrist. I don't think it'll fit. I think the most you could do is talk about it. You could probably give like a base ability or something, but you couldn't include the whole. Wouldn't fit. If you include the base rules for the Penumbrist, it'd be like, even if you're just doing first level and you condense it, you're still looking at 4 pages probably. Maybe you could get it down to 2. But you'd have to shorthand a bunch of stuff. Like, you'd have to, like, instead of giving the full rules for spellcasting, you say, yeah, this casts spells like this. Except as noted below, right? You could do that. Boy. Yeah, I think you can't get the Penumbrist in here without it being 2 to 4 pages. I just don't see a way to make that happen. Huh. Okay. This is also a good place to talk about other class options. You know, especially kind of going through the other classes and being like, yeah, if you're a ranger, you know, none of the ranger focus spell stuff is available to you. None of that stuff exists. But there are other things in its place, right? Rangers can get into kind of herbalist alchemy, you know, that sort of stuff. Boy, then I think we're kind of, that's most of it. There isn't a lot. Oh, the gods. We want to go over the gods. Going over all 5 of them. And then I'm just going to categorize it as other changes. With a focus on magic. And how magic works in the world. Right? Yeah, gods have to be in there. Because without that, you got nothing. There's a bunch of classes that just don't work. You can't make a cleric without knowing what the gods are. I think that's it. I don't think there's a lot else that needs to go in the character section. But looking at it, I don't see any way that it's not at least 2 pages. And that's assuming you don't present the Penumbrist. I think it's a 4-page section. I think it's 4 pages. I don't see a way to get away out of it without it being 4 pages. Now maybe you can cram the basic Penumbrist in there, make it 5. If this is a PDF, it doesn't matter how many pages there are. So one of the things you have to take into account, little trick. Whenever you're printing a book, especially one that's going to be saddle stitched, and what that means basically is stapled. I don't know why it's called saddle stitch, but I guess at one point in time before staples they would actually stitch, but now it's just staples. But whenever you're doing something like that, you have to add pages in increments of 4. Because every piece of paper you put in gets folded through the spine, has a front and back on both ends of the book. So you're always adding in increments of 4. But this is a PDF, so it doesn't really matter. It can be however many pages I need it to be. But I think for accessibility, it can't be pages. That's too much. And also, frankly, it's just here to be a taste. It's not meant to be... You don't need the player's guide. It's just there to give you a sampling of what the player's guide contains. Interesting. Okay, so Ancestry, let me just do a quick math rundown here. If I give Gloamwing Basics, that's going to be half a page at a minimum. backgrounds can be quarter page. I mean, assuming I also include art, ancestry and backgrounds may be 1 page, especially if there's kind of a bit of a primer on character creation for the world. So ancestry's background are a page. Classes do 1 page talking about classes in general, going through all the various changes for all the various classes. Then do a 2-page spread where you try and get all the penumbrist in. First level penumbrist, basically. Not all the options, not all the feats, not all the choices, just enough to make a base character. Might work. So that'd be 2, that's 4 right there. Then go over gods and other changes and focus on magic. Maybe touch on some gear. Some spell stuff. If you're going to include the penumbrist, you're going to need to include some of the spells. At least 1 or 2. Okay. So, boy, the character bit is probably 6 pages. So I think it's 4 without the penumbra, 6 with the penumbra. That's going to be the choice. Is it an 8-page quick start or a 2-page quick start? Because we're starting to get to the point where this thing's probably, you know, if I start including cover and licenses and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I could just include a pre-gen penumbra stat. Doesn't quite work as a quick start, though. The quick start's job is to allow you to make something. To get ready. Even if, you know, its job is to jump you right into the action, but it still assumes that you're making your own character. Huh. Tricky. I don't... So, the thing that I think is tricky right now is that an 8-page quick start is starting to get pretty meaty. That's not outrageous, though, considering the player's guide is 64 pages. So that's 1/8 the player's guide. So, you know, it's not like the player's guide doesn't have a lot more in it. I would have to cut some things pretty hard to get this to fit in those number of pages. Now, assuming you slap a cover on it, even if that cover is just a cut or a trim down of the main player's guide cover, and then a back page which contains kind of a guide to the various products and the orc license, yeah, you're at 10 pages. It's not outrageous. It's not printable, but that's okay. I mean, it'd be printable if... yeah. It'd have to go... It'd have to do something. 12 or something. Be a TOC... It'd be a map. It's not worth doing. Yeah. And to be honest, printing it is probably not going to be a thing. Player's Guide I'm trying to design to make sure that it can be printed. Even if it's just POD at first. But I also think I'm trying to set it up so that I can take the player's guide and the GM's guide and put them in one book for cover. So I could keep it 8 for POD, but I'd have to trim some stuff because I need to get a cover in there and stuff. I'm not even sure POD can drive-thru even do a POD of 8 pages. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it can. That may be a moot point. Partner knowledge base, printing base, book printing and card printing, basic book printing FAQ. Proof. Sure, it talks about maximum number of pages. Let me see the print cost calculator. Can it do 8? Soft cover, standard color, hard size. 8. Won't do 8. Please check the page ranges in the chart below. Oh, 18's the minimum. Which is weird, because that's not divisible by 4. Oh, that's right. They do perfect bound. So perfect bound is different. Perfect bound is the pages don't loop. They don't staple. So if it's perfect bound, that means each page is its own sheet. And then they're all glue bound to the spine. But still, the minimum's 18. So that's not bad. There's no way I'm going to get this thing up to 18. That's not going to happen. But if I kept the meat of it at 8, and then did a kind of front cover, back cover kind of thing, you could print it on, you know, it'd actually be 12, and you could print it on 311 by 17 paper. You could. I don't think anybody would, but you could. Not worth spending too much time. There's anything else that's useful in there? I don't think so. I think you just want a primer of the world, kind of an idea about what the setting is about, an idea, you know, giving you enough knowledge so that if you make a character, you know where they come from. You can at least fake it and be like, yeah, I'm a halfling, I'm from Bellcrash, right? You know, or whatever, right? You know, I'm a halfling who grew up in the gutters of Barnathus, and you know, or I'm an orc from the Southern Kingdom, right? You know, whatever, right? That's fine. You know, I'm a refugee from the Zenkar expansion, right? You know, just enough to give everybody something to latch on to. They can get into the player's guide itself to get kind of more information. But this would be enough. I don't know that I mean, I guess the only place where I end up asking questions is, do I need more space for Wormbone? Because right now it is pretty tight. So the entire world primer, look at Alnir, and the zoom in at the Icescar Valley is 2 pages. That's not a lot of space. In fact, it's a shockingly small amount of space. It's basically nothing. Especially if I include both maps in there. Maybe the answer is not to include both maps. If I only include one map, I can definitely make everything good. And honestly, I'd probably include the Icescar Valley map before I include the Alnir. The Alnir map is helpful, but you don't actually need to know those things, right? Because saying like, yeah, Zenkar, you know, a massive king, you know, empire to the south that stretches all the way from both borders, both coasts of Alnir, kind of eating the middle of a continent. That's the only description you need. You don't need the map for that. The map doesn't really do you much good because you're not going to travel. It's not. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe cut for space. I do think having relational kind of understandings of how some of these things work is helpful, but, you know, this is just a quick start. If you need that level of detail, pick up the, pick up the full book. Pick up the player's guide. That'll have it. Huh. Anything else rules-wise I'm missing? Question. Don't think so. Destiny. Boy, I still haven't fully rewritten the Destiny system. I don't know if it's doing the work that it might just... I don't necessarily want to cut it, but no one's used it. None of my groups ever played with it, and I haven't heard of anybody else either. Languages, holy days, calendars, none of that stuff is super critical to a quick start. Ancestries. I mean, there's so much stuff in here, but I guess I could include the Thanassar elf heritage. That's big. Yeah. Just not sure that the Destiny stuff is working. Yeah, the performance passing ability. And honestly, I think it's mostly like other. So maybe it does stay, but I don't know that I could include it in here. It's way too big, and you'd have to include all of it, or at least the vast majority. So I think the best, for a quick start, if I do keep the Destiny system in the game, I think the best option is just to mention it and be like, "Yep, the full rules for that are in the player's guide. It's too big to fit here." All right, so we got an 8-page book, 2 pages of setting. That probably works. Again, if we cut the map of Alnir, it probably works. And then the character stuff. Yeah, it just comes down to whether or not I include the base bit of them. And that saves me 2 pages that don't really critical. Can I actually even get the 2 pages? Is that even possible? So I wouldn't need to include the whole table. Cleric. So right now, you know, giving the initial proficiencies, you could list those in more of a paragraph form. I mean, they don't take up as much space. Hit points and stuff. Spell casting you could cover by saying it works kind of just like this and leave it at that. Heightened spells, cantrips, you don't need to talk about any of that. You need to get Blessed by Shadow and Calling. Shadow modes first by... Heck. How much is all of that? Blessed by Shadow, Falling, Shadow modes, first bond is... How many words is that? That is 675 words. You could probably trim it up, but I doubt you could get it much smaller than about 500 words. 500 words is half it. That said, we're talking about giving this a spread, so there may be fine. If I get down to voice, I could only include 1 voice, one of the 3. That at least cuts down my number of spells and stuff. And then if I include, you know, 2 feet, probably fine. Yeah, I bet you, yeah, you could make it fit. You could definitely make it fit in a spread. Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it would definitely fit in a spread. Looking at it, you'd have to be judicious in what you included, but you could definitely get it in 2 pages. The question is, can I get it in 2 pages? That way it's 2 opposing pages. So, like, you know, 3 and 4, or 4 and 5. Or, sorry, 5 and 6. 3 and 4 or 5 and 6. They would have to be 5 and 6. Which means the first spread would have to be ancestries, backgrounds, and other class info, which I think would all fit. And then the final 2 pages, 7 and 8, would be gods, other changes, and maybe you can even cram the orc license in there. And a rundown of the other products. You can maybe get all of that in a half page. The orc license, fortunately, only takes up this much space. It's much smaller than the OGL was. So, that's simpler at least. Okay. I mean, that kind of all tracks. I think that's a pretty cogent quick start. I've had other quick starts, right? So, most of the quick starts that you see, though, are for game systems. They're like, hey, you want to give Shadowrun a try? Here, try the quick start. And it just basically shotguns the rules at you very quickly and gets you going. Setting quick starts aren't as common, but I do think it'd be useful. All right. Well, there we are. Yeah, I'm not sure that there's much else to talk about this. This is a shorter topic than some of the previous ones. Make sure I got this saved. Okay. I think I got that. Still floating around. There it is. Good. Good, good. All right. So that's where we're at on that. What else I got going on right now? I think for many of you who have been donating at a higher tier level, I want to get some updates out to all of you relatively soon to kind of go over some of your options, because some of you have been building up word counts, and I want to make sure that folks have an understanding of how to spend those. I did get a question from somebody asking whether or not there was a way to kind of pad that amount. Currently, there isn't, and I want to say that there isn't because I'm no one in the history of this Patreon has ever redeemed any of those. And I am a little, I don't want to overcommit, because I do have other stuff on my plate, including another small freelance thing I got roped into. This one's fortunately small and won't be a big problem, but I don't think it's going to disrupt everything like the previous one did. But it was one of those things where it was like, well, I guess I'll do it. Fine. I'm the right person to do it, so I'll do it. But yeah, that's what I have going on right now. I am still looking at sometime later this year, transitioning the Patreon over to talk more about other things that I'm playing around with. I have a few things. Okay, that's not okay. I do have a few other things floating around in my background right now that I'm playing around with. Some of which are coming along nicely. I don't know what that is. That's weird. Anyway, we'll just make that go away. But, as we go forward, there's lots of things that I play around with all the time. I kind of flitter between projects. This, of course, is still my primary focus, and work is coming along quite nicely on it. I think some of these pieces are now finally coming back into focus after the remaster kind of threw everything up into limbo. As a note, this isn't a direct plug, but obviously this coming weekend is PaizoCon. There will be some exciting news and announcements there. You're not going to get any spoilers out of me here, obviously. My role in this PaizoCon is relatively limited, to be honest, because I'm mostly managing teams these days and kind of planning some things that are still very far out. But yeah, there should be some exciting news, though, so make sure to tune into that this coming weekend. I will be doing... I'll have an AMA on the Paizo, the PaizoCon Discord. I'll have an AMA there. Mostly going to be talking about Paizo stuff there, but it's mostly just an AMA for us. So if folks do want to ask questions about other things, I'm happy to answer them. Of course, you can always do that on my Discord as well, which all of you should have access to. So that's pretty exciting. The keynote is this Friday. Make sure to tune into that. That's where all the big news will happen. And then throughout the weekend, there'll be more deep dives into some of the other stuff. Undoubtedly, after this weekend, I will have some more things to talk about Eventide and some of the announcements and effects coming out of some of those panels and some of those discussions, because some of it will reveal things that then open up some avenues of discussion for Eventide as well, as I try and keep the campaign just one step behind what's, so I let Paizo make the announcements, that I come out with my stuff, because I never want to jump the gun. So, yeah, that's what I got. I don't know if any of you have any other questions or any thoughts here before we call it this week. A little shorter this week. This topic wasn't quite as robust. It'll be fun to put together a quick start. I do have plenty of art for it this night. If I'm including the Glomling and the Penumbrist, I've got full body shots of characters and stuff. So easy enough to grab some art there. Yeah, I'm just looking at all the stuff I have here, and a bunch of this is art I haven't even put in Adventures yet, because it's all for part 2. And it's just not done yet. So we'll get to that here very, very soon. So cool. Well, folks, that's about all I got here for today. I want to thank you all for your continued support. Let's see, our next... we still got one more stream this month. So fun! Alright, folks, I hope you had a good time here today. It was a good chat. Thank you for your thoughts and ideas and poking at this thing with me. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. I will see many of you over on Twitch here in just a bit. So thank you for watching. Thank you for your continued patronage, and we will see you